Hey, what's going on there, buddy? Welcome back to yet another episode of the Reclaimed American Podcast. And this is a special episode because this is the first episode where I'm a dad. So, Baby Daphne came out on January the 6th. And that's actually the topic of this show today. I'm calling this Daphne is Here. Basically, if you remember last episode, and if you didn't, shame on you, go back listen to it. But if you remember from the last episode, I kind of went over the whole Baby T Chronicles from the beginning. Okay, talking about the pregnancy, how things were for my wife, what we had to go through, all that good stuff, right? Well, now that Baby Daphne is here, now we begin a new chapter. Now we're going to have the Daphne Chronicles. So I apologize for that, but you know what? I'm not really sorry after all because it's exciting for me. This is the first time I have ever been a dad. So I mean, I don't know what the hell I'm going to get into. I don't know what kind of shit's going to happen to me out there, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm super stoked, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Basically, if the Chronicles, if Baby T Chronicles is all about the pregnancy, well, today's show is going to be all about the labor because my wife did not have a good time with this one. Some women are like, oh, it was rainbows and unicorns. I know I've said that before. Whatever. But this was not rainbows and unicorns by any stretch. My wife had a hell of a time. So, Daphne, if you're listening to this like 20 years down the road, you get to find out what it was like for your mother and me during your birth. And so basically, here's the rundown. We went to the hospital on Saturday morning. That would have been Saturday the 4th, January 4th. And my wife had a huge migraine. She had actually had it since like 5 a.m. that morning. I was, your typical guy. Oh, just take some aspirin. You'll be fine. And she did take aspirin. I tried giving her, if I remember right, I believe I tried giving her a massage. Kept trying to tell her, why don't you go take a shower? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? She didn't want any of that. And finally, around, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock, she's like, look, you know where we need to go. So I'm like, okay, fine. Let's get in the car. Let's go down to the hospital. So we get in the car and we go down to the Women's Hospital of Texas. Which, by the way, if you are anywhere in the Houston area and you're a woman during pregnancy, for the most part, or they do a lot of other specialty things primarily for women, and you need to go to the ER and you don't want to sit in Memorial Hermann or any of the other hospital franchises, I guess, because you know you're going to be sitting in the waiting room for 5 fucking hours, go to Women's Hospital of Texas. Every time we've gone there, we've been in and out in less than 3 hours. Just saying, great place if you're a pregnant woman. Go there, check it out. Anyhow, so we go there. They check her blood pressure. First they ask, all right, so what's going on? And she tells them, I've had a migraine since like 5 o'clock this morning. I'm 38 weeks along. Monday, I officially hit 39 weeks. And I feel like shit. So they hook her up to the blood pressure monitor. They check it. And they're like, oh, tell you what, hold on. We'll be right back. So they went and they consulted with the labor and delivery ward. And they come back in and they're basically like, all right, well, you have super high blood pressure. We're going to say it's preeclampsia, and you're going to labor and delivery today. So we're like, oh, all right. Now, the funny thing about that, when we were at our doctor's visit for our official week 38 doctor visit, and we set up for Monday the 6th to have the baby or to start inducing labor, my wife didn't want Monday. She's like, no, I don't want the 6th. It's a thing with my parents. It's a religious thing. And don't get me wrong, it'd be a great day to have a baby on, but they're so like adamant. Oh, it's gonna be the sixth. It's gonna be the sixth. It's the wise men's day or some shit like that. My wife's like, no, 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 I don't want none of that. Just because they're gonna be however they are. But the doc's like, well, I can't do the seventh, and the eighth isn't looking all that great either. Monday really is the best day, so all right, fine, we'll go ahead and do the Monday. Well, here we are going in on Saturday, the fourth, and I'm joking with my wife. I'm like, hey, you're going in to start labor, and most likely she'll be due or born before Monday, so you get your wish after all. And she just kind of gave me that eat shit and die look, but whatever. Um, but yeah, so they take us up to labor and delivery. And they're like, all right, before we can start inducing, we've got to get this migraine under control. So they start pumping her full of all kinds of meds. Well, if you have super high blood pressure and you're about to give birth, they put you on magnesium. And magnesium is a great mineral for people that are low in it, but when you're pregnant and you're on it for an extended period of time, it kind of swells up your extremities like a balloon. Maybe not quite like a balloon, more like you know those balloons that they make the balloon figures out of, and they're like big sausages, overstuffed sausages. There you go. That's what happened to my wife. They put her on the magnesium. They give her some other shit, and slowly the migraine goes away. So like 5, 6 o'clock that evening, now mind you, we've been at the hospital since 10:30, 11 a.m. Saturday morning, right? By about 5, 6 o'clock that evening, the migraine is finally gone, and they're starting to pump the what they call the pit drip, or also known as oxytocin, to induce the labor. And they're like, all right, well, migraine's gone, your blood pressure's somewhat under control. We're going to go ahead and start you on the induction medication. And so that's just how it started. So here we are, we're going along, and in the beginning, my wife was only about maybe 1.5 centimeters. By God, I don't know. I think it was about 3 o'clock or Sunday morning, if I'm remembering my timing right. By about 3 o'clock Sunday morning, my wife had gone from 1.5 up to a whopping 3 centimeters. And the night shift doc was like, "Well, we got you on the stuff. We're slowly increasing the pit drip concentration, but you're still not quite progressing as quickly as we'd like. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and rupture the sac. That way it will move things along quicker." So we're like, okay, cool, sure, no problem. So they go in, they use this little plastic hook looking dealy, and they pop the sac. And from that point until, I don't know, what was that, about 5:30-ish Sunday afternoon, my wife had still not really progressed for shit on the centimeter scale. And so they're finally, about that time, about 5:30, our doctor comes in, and she checks my wife, and she's like, she looks at the nurse, and she's like, "I thought the other doctor popped the sac." And she's like, "Oh, she did. She did that last night around 3 a.m." And our doc, with her hand still up in my wife's hoo, she's like, "Well, no, she didn't, because I'm feeling it right here." So my understanding is there's something called the foresac, and that's what the doc probably actually got, which, I don't know, I don't do the whole medical terminology and understanding fully how all this shit works, but basic understanding is the sac that the baby is in is made up of some layers. And sometimes when the head gets into a certain position in the pelvis, it can cause one of the layers to kind of bulge ahead of the other. And that is basically what the night shift doc got. But because they didn't monitor how much fluid was actually coming out, They didn't realize that they missed the main sac. But anyways, so our doc pops the sac. There's a rush of fluid, and then it kind of trickles. There's that initial rush, and it kind of trickles from there. But whatever. So she's like, "All right, now it's popped. Now we're gonna wait and see what's going on." No, I think that was 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon. So our doc comes back in around 5:30. That 2.5 hours later, and my wife went from 3 centimeters up to 6 centimeters. So our doc's like, "Awesome! You're finally progressing in this labor. Your baby is finally coming. But you're only at 6 centimeters. We need a lot more progress, but you did 3 centimeters in 2 hours. That's awesome." And if you heard my dogs in the background, ignore that. But she's like, "That's awesome. Unfortunately, I've already been here on call for 25 hours. I've got to go home for a little bit. But hey, here's the night shift doc." Now, up to this point, we've liked all the doctors we've dealt with from Saturday morning on. We've enjoyed all of the nursing staff from Saturday morning on. When she introduced us to the night shift doc, my wife and I both, we maintain our composure, and we're like, "Oh, okay, hi, how are you? Blah, 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 blah." And then when the night shift doc and the accompanying nursing staff walks out of the room with our doctor, my wife and I both look at each other and we're like, "Oh, no, 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 no." Because we both instantly in our heads and almost identically out loud said, "Oh my God, that's Dr. Manhands." Now, if you're wondering what I mean by Dr. Manhands, this doctor was technically a woman. Our understanding is that she is very, very into fitness. Like, possibly, and nothing against her personally, okay? Just saying that now. But there could be some chromosomal issues and maybe a little higher than normal testosterone levels in this woman. And we were kind of scared of her. And the nursing staff that accompanied us on this night shift journey was not, the nurses were not the feminine nurses that we've had up until this point. No, this one was, while she was pleasant to deal with, she was a large woman. And I don't mean large as in fat. I mean, she was like I'm hesitant to say linebacker, but there it is. There it is. It's out, okay? She was like a fucking linebacker. Like every time that we had to roll my wife over to change positions, try to get the baby to move around, most of the other nursing staff, they're like, "All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Whoop. How are you? Did that feel okay? Sorry if we hurt you." No, this one's like, "All right, ready? 1, 2, whoom," and then just shoved her or lifted the mat that my wife was laying on. And she goes instantly from this to this. Rather than all the other nurses, they're like, "Okay, here we go. We're rolling over gently." No, there was no gentle with this lady. It was just, boom, there you go. So anyway, so that was our night shift experience, okay? Now, up to this point, so our doc ruptured the sac, verified at 5:30 p.m. Sunday night that we had gone up to 6 centimeters. Now, from that point on, until like 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday, we went from 6 centimeters, 7 centimeters, 7.5, 8, 8.5, and we never made it to 9. We just kind of stalled out right there around 3 o'clock in the morning. During this time, they're upping my wife's dosage of the pit drip stuff, the oxytocin. So she's getting like a shit ton of this stuff. Every time there's a contraction, the baby's head is like wedging itself into her pelvis. But during this process, I think it was Saturday night, my wife was feeling a lot of pain, so she asked for the epidural. When the doc gave her the epidural, it went from rainbows and lollipops. Wait, no, God, that was Sunday when that happened. Yeah, because it was the Dr. Manhands and her merry band of people. So when the guy came in to do the epidural, I have to step out of the room because technically it's a surgical procedure. So I step out of the room, they do it, I come back in, I look at my wife, and she's not looking good. She's pale as fuck. And I look at her, I'm like, darling, you need to breathe. Breathe deep, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And she's like, mm. And then so I'm reaching for a barf bag. I get it, open it up, boom, catch it right as it's coming out. And I'm following her head as she's doing this like 3 to 5 more times. During this whole process, Mr. Epidural Man is like, well, I did the epidural perfectly. And there's nothing wrong with the way I did the epidural. So the way she's feeling is not my problem. And now, as he's saying this, he's also admitting that, oh well, yeah, I had to actually stick her twice because the first one we got a wet tap on that one, but everything went fine on the second one. But yeah, anyways, this guy was arrogant as fuck, and whatever. So it got done. She did not respond well to the immediate inrush of medication from the epidural, and she popped and blue chunks everywhere into a little bag as I'm catching it going around. But once that part was over, then she started settling down some. Um, she, at some point, ended up, the nurses were telling her, if you hurt, hit the little button and it'll give you more medicine in the epidural and you'll feel better. She did that one time, and when they do that, you hit that button and it pumps like 12 milliliters of whatever shit, fentanyl or whatever the hell, into your back. And my wife was like, oh, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. She didn't puke, but she didn't feel good. So we talked to the nurses, and they got the anesthesiologist, a different person, to come in. And they adjusted the machine to only do half dose. And so at that point, my wife was fine. The half dose did not mess with her, but it did make her feel better. So, all right. So now we've got epidural. You found out that she puked blue chunks when she got the epidural. We're 3 o'clock in the morning. Nothing's progressing. So I go out to the nurse station. I talk to the nurse. And I'm like, all right, so what's going on? And they're like, well, here's the deal. We didn't want to say this in front of your wife because since she has a history of anxiety issues, we're worried that it might trigger an anxiety attack. But because she's been in labor for so long, her cervix is basically swelling a little bit. Because of swelling, it's not relaxing between contractions like it's supposed to. So we're going to back off on the oxytocin to try to give her cervix a chance to relax a little bit before we pump it back up again and try to get this thing going. But if things don't progress well, and if we see any issue with the baby's heart rate, we're going to take her in for a C-section. So I was like, okay, cool. Because at this point, we're kind of still wanting to do the natural birth, but I'm kind of getting to the point where, hey, if someone just says, do you want a C-section? We'd probably take it, but no one really said it. We didn't really mention it. So we're still trying for a natural birth at this point. Our doc comes back in Monday morning around I want to say it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock. And she asked the nursing staff, hey, how's things going? What do you mean it's not progressing? If it's not progressing, why didn't you do a C-section last night? All right, bump my appointment because she actually was coming in at this time to do a C-section for another customer, client, whatever. And she's like, all right, bump them. Cindy's going in first. So as soon as our doc got in, found out what was going on, found out there was no further progress of the labor, she's like, screw this shit. You're going in right now. We're taking this baby out. You're having a baby. So we go in Saturday morning. Okay? Saturday morning. 11 o'clock in the morning. Monday at 7:42 a.m., our little precious baby Daphne finally comes out to the world. So I'm in the room. They're doing the C-section. They got this big curtain up so I can't see what the fuck they're pulling out of her stomach. But we're sitting there. I'm holding my wife's hand. She's like 3 sheets to the wind on all kinds of drugs. But then we hear that awesome sound, that cry of a baby. And the doc saying, congratulations, you've got a baby girl. And she's so beautiful, healthy, blah, 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 perfect, da, 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 da. Then finally they wrap her up, clean her up, bring her over to us. And we're like, oh my God. And it was awesome. I was all smiles. I was giddy as fuck. I was just like, yeah, 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 yeah. And so we get some pictures. I go over to the other side of the curtain because that's where they had the little weighing station and stuff where they put the tags, the bands, and all that crap on the baby so no one can walk away with it. Excuse me. And while I'm over there, I kind of glance over my shoulder and I can see the thing that's like, got my wife spread open, as they're stuffing her guts back in. And I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool. And then I hear the baby fuss. I'm like, ooh, baby. So I totally had a squirrel moment there. And I was focused on the baby the whole time. I was excited as hell. I'm like, yeah, we got a baby. She's 8 pounds, 2 ounces, like 20 inches at birth, and totally healthy, 10 fingers and toes. She didn't have that like wrinkly old man looking face syndrome thing that a lot of babies have going on. She's as healthy as can be. Beautiful. Of course, I'm partial, but yeah. So that's what's going on. So we've got a baby. She's out. She's in the world. They let me hold her. I go back. I sit with my wife. We get a few photos with the baby. Then they end up taking me and the baby to a recovery area. So once they finish stuffing all my wife's insides back in, they sew her up, glue her up, however they do that shit, where they close it all up. But while I'm sitting down there with the baby, up to this point, a lot of people are like, oh, I cried like a baby when my baby came out. Well, up to this point, I had not cried because I was just super excited, super stoked. But once I'm sitting in that recovery room and I've got the baby in my arms, I'm looking down at her and she's all like, and she's like just making all the little baby sounds and whatnot. I have to admit, I wept. Okay, I broke down a little bit. I'm like, the emotions finally got the best of me, and I'm like, oh my god, we've got this little baby. Oh my god, I've got a little baby. And yeah, so I cried a little bit. And then once my wife finally got wheeled into the recovery area, and we're both holding the baby, looking at the baby and whatnot, then she cries a little, I cried a little bit, and yeah, that was about it. But anyway, so finally, now up to this point, we're still on Monday. We're in the recovery area. We're there for 2 hours, okay? And they finally say, all right, we've got a room ready for you. You've finished the recovery area. Now we're going to take you up to your room. So we all three of us go up to the room with the nurses. We get into the room, and then that starts the next phase of the whole ordeal. And what I mean by that is, so up to this point, due to the magnesium, like I said, my wife is starting to swell up like a balloon. And they keep her on the magnesium for a little bit once we get to our postpartum room. And I think she was still on that all day Monday, and they took it out on Tuesday. So basically that's Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday, and sometime on Tuesday they took the magnesium drip off her. So that was at least 3 days of magnesium going into her. Swelling like crazy. They've got these like pressure pumps on her legs to keep blood clots from forming. And they squeeze and they release. They squeeze and release. So that's keeping things moving in her calves, right? It took pretty much from Monday through Thursday. I was the one taking care of the baby because my wife, she was gone. Mentally, she was not there due to all the medications, the pain pills, and all the other stuff. They had her on the epidural until Wednesday, I believe. Wednesday morning, I think, is when that came out. They finally released us on Thursday. So all through that whole time, if the baby cried because she had a poopy diaper, this guy changed it. If she was hungry, I fed her off a formula bottle. Which, by the way, I've not found it at H-E-B, but they have these awesome little bottles. They're 2-ounce bottles made by Similac with formula, pre-mixed, pre-ready. All you do is you unscrew the top, put a nipple top on, and boom, you feed it to the baby. They are freaking awesome. If you're feeding your baby formula, try to find these things. No refrigeration needed. But of course, on the bottle it does say if it's been open for more than an hour, discard. So just saying. But anyways, so that's what we've been feeding her. My wife is breastfeeding. She's also pumping. So when we run out of what's been pumped, then we go back to the formula. So yeah, we're kind of back and forth a little bit. So she is getting formula. She is getting breast milk. Life is good there. My wife was still pretty much kind of not all coherent as she should be until Saturday. Saturday, she was finally starting to become herself again. Now, here we are, the 16th. My wife's legs are still swole as fuck. Our next appointment with the doc to see my wife is on Monday the 20th, so we'll find out what's going on then. Because of all the extra fluid she's retained, she's on blood pressure medication. We had to up that from 2 times a day for the last couple of days to starting today, she's up to 3 times a day, just to help keep her blood pressure under check because it was sky high through the roof. But things are progressing. The baby is healthy as an ox. We've already had our first appointment with the pediatrician since leaving the hospital, or since she was born. We've already increased length by 1/4 of an inch, and she's already gone from 8.2 pounds to 8.35 pounds. Now, they say normally babies lose a little weight in the hospital when after birth. Ours did for like a day and a half, and then we just kept feeding her, and she was actually just a little bit above weight when we left the hospital. So at the moment, everything's good, everything's healthy, knock on wood, and everyone's progressing well. My wife, her wellness is very, very slow, but we are getting there. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and say thank you, God, for a healthy baby. Thank you, God, for watching out for my wife and keeping all of us sane through this entire ordeal. Please continue to watch out for our baby. Watch out for my wife especially. Let her get back to feeling healthy. And please let that damn swelling go away. Oh my God, it's horrible. But that being said, amen. Up to this point, my wife has been able to start moving around a lot better than what she originally was. She can kind of sit up without it hurting her abdomen too much. When we first got to the house, she couldn't walk around that easily. But now she's getting up and moving around pretty well. But like I said, her feet look like overstuffed tamales or overstuffed sausage, however you want to phrase it. And her legs they're fucking huge. But every day there's a little bit of progress, so that's good. Hopefully now that we've got the blood pressure kind of in check, maybe now the swelling will start going down a little better. She already said she's been peeing like crazy all day today, which is good because that's how your body gets rid of all that excess fluid. But that's it. I'm gonna call that part good. I would like to remind you, if you're watching the video, please find us on Facebook, Reclaimed American. We also have a closed group, which I haven't done much with, I admit, but it is Reclaimed American Podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, and also if you're watching the video, find us on iTunes or any other podcast player of choice. Look for Reclaimed American. If you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to subscribe over to the YouTube channel, Reclaimed American. Use the same logo, the little black and white flag with a saw blade around it, because yes, I still do woodworking stuff as well. Everything's still progressing. Everything's progressing insanely slow because the baby's taking up a lot of time. I'm back to work already because someone's got to pay for all this shit. So like us, share us with your friends, family, anyone that you think could use this message, or if nothing else, you want people to laugh at me. I'm game for either way. So thank you guys. Thank you, God. Love you all. See you next time.